Can you believe this? Fairy tales are in fact misleading. Cinderella is revealed as a true horror story, a film that has been rated 7.3 by 370,000 viewers. This movie removes the charming facade of fairy tales and completely challenges traditional perceptions. Initially, I did not associate the film with Cinderella because its true protagonist is not Cinderella herself, but the intricate details within the story. The story begins with her rosy, idealistic dream. Elvira imagines a sweet romance with the prince, and the first thing she does upon waking in the carriage is search for the prince's collection of love poems. At this stage, she is innocent and filled with anticipation for the privileged life she believes awaits her. It is revealed that her widowed mother has fallen in love with an elderly nobleman. Today, she and her sister Alma accompany their mother to the estate for the wedding, an event that will elevate the entire family from commoners to nobility, allowing them to enjoy wealth and status. However, during the dinner on the same day, the old nobleman becomes overly excited and suddenly passes away. Worse still, it is discovered that he was burdened by substantial debts. The true motive behind the marriage was to defraud Elvira's mother of her savings. However, by the time the truth emerges, it is already too late. The debt collectors have arrived. Her mother collapses in despair, and Elvira attempts to comfort her, reassuring her that a solution can always be found. Nevertheless, her mother reveals the deep sorrow and hardship she faces as a middle-aged widow.
Kan gifte meg. Men prins. Ta en kikk i speilet, jenta mi. Alma, hun har jo ikke begynt å blø engang.
Although her mother's words are deeply discouraging, Elvira insists on standing before the mirror. She sees her curly hair, prominent braces, and a pronounced nose bridge. She has to acknowledge that she has no connection to conventional beauty and perhaps will never have a chance with the prince in her lifetime. Yet, events soon take an unexpected turn. The prince's messenger announces in the courtyard that a royal ball will be held in 4 months, open to all noble women.
Namn?
Agnes, Angelica, Alicia, Victoria från Morgonstjärna Munte av Rosenhof.
Namn?
Elvira.
Från?
At this awkward moment, thankfully, Agnes steps in to help her out of the situation.
Hon är min stepsister.
The invitation was addressed to Elvira von Stepsister. What appears to be a humorous moment is, in fact, deeply satirical. A single name is enough to distinguish the nobility from ordinary citizens. This clearly demonstrates the rigid structure of the class hierarchy. Elvira finally had the opportunity to encounter the prince. In order to achieve this goal, the first priority was to alter her physical appearance. A cosmetic surgeon conducted an assessment of Elvira's facial features. Removing her braces was straightforward, but her nose needed to be refined. The surgeon also suggested eyelash extensions, which greatly excited Elvira. However, since the family was in debt, her mother advised postponing that particular procedure. The payment would be made after the ball. Alma unintentionally glanced toward the adjacent operating room. A nurse was cleaning up blood from the floor, which made Alma anxious for her sister. At this point, the atmosphere began to take on the characteristics of a horror film. Although the surgeon's instruments appeared frightening, the process of removing Elvira's braces was relatively smooth. Elvira was very satisfied with her bright white teeth. However, what followed would be an even more difficult and painful experience. Her mother selected a nose reshaping procedure, during which a sharp rasp was applied directly to Elvira's prominent nasal bridge. The procedure was performed in exactly this straightforward and unrefined way. It's also hard to ease that sharp, excruciating pain. In contrast to Alma's distressed expression, their mother's face was filled with anticipation, completely indifferent to her daughter's pain. Even when blood from the rasp dripped into Elvira's mouth, the doctor did not stop using the hammer and saw. Amid Elvira's heart-wrenching cries, the scene shifted to the selection venue for the ball. The Ladies' Academy would conduct training sessions for them. Unlike the other confident noblewomen, Elvira, wearing a nose splint, sat alone and appeared out of place. The poised and elegant instructor, Miss Sophie, then made her entrance. There is an important detail. While all the other students greeted the teacher with a unified good morning, Elvira alone did not know the teacher's name.
Ett urval kommer att göras av mig och Madame Vanja. Vi kommer att dela ut en huvudroll och 2 biroller som kommer att ge de utvalda en unik möjlighet att få visa upp sig för prinsen. Detta, mina flickor, kommer att bli den viktigaste kvällen i hela era liv. Det kommer att vara smakfullt. av grevar.
The future described by the teacher sounded truly inspiring. However, Elvira was met with a series of discouraging setbacks. On the first day of class, she eagerly sat in the front row, fully engaged in the lesson. Yet the dance instructor repeatedly asked her to move to the back.
Förstår du inte?
Although Elvira had suffered significant setbacks, she persevered and continued with her exercises. However, it was evident that she could not compare to Agnes's grace and elegance. To achieve weight loss, Elvira limited herself to only drinking lemon water for dinner. Seeing her sister's plate filled with meat, she could only watch in silence and suppress her desire to eat. As a side note, Elvira's mother refused to pay for her father's funeral expenses, which caused Agnes to leave the table in anger. Agnes then went to see her father's body, which was already decomposing and surrounded by flies, foreshadowing future events in the story. At the academy, the preliminary selection results were announced promptly. Some candidates were pleased with the outcome, while others were disappointed. Elvira approached the results list with apprehension, expecting to be unsuccessful. To her surprise, she saw that her name had been added to the last row. She was immediately filled with joy. The advanced training sessions have commenced, yet the dance instructor continues to hold a bias against Elvira.
Duha talang. Bortkastat talang. Jag ville inte ha dig. Din mamma har betalat mig, prawda? Musisz pracować.
This harsh humiliation is a tremendous blow to the emotionally vulnerable young girl. In contrast, Agnes is as radiant as a star, and the resulting sense of injustice and jealousy causes Elvira to become tearful. Instead of responding with anger, failure is more likely to cause her to feel disheartened and lose motivation. Elvira looks at her protruding stomach with clear dissatisfaction, yet she still secretly consumes a piece of hidden cake. Fortunately, Miss Sophie is empathetic and perceptive.
Jag ser så mycket av mig själv i dig.
Elvira är vacker. Ja. Jag är bara både stygg och fet.
Får jag se? Den är vacker. Du formar utsidan till att passa det som du vet finns på insidan.
Miss Sophie offers significant emotional support and even gives her a small metal box. What is inside this box? The answer is revealed shortly thereafter. Surprisingly, it contains tapeworm eggs. In periods of limited medical advancement, tapeworms were a source of dread for many people. However, for Elvira, they serve as a means to lose weight. When Alma learns that her sister intends to host tapeworms in her body, she finds the idea completely incomprehensible.
Allt mamma säger.
Mamma vet ingenting om det här. Du vågar inte synklana.
Without saying a word, Alma leads her horse away, leaving Elvira standing there in frustration. In order to prevent Alma from revealing her secret, Elvira, though anxious as she watches the larvae wriggle inside the eggs, eventually forces herself to swallow them. At that moment, a bird falls from above, soon followed by the voices of a group of men. She approaches a crack in a stone wall ahead, which is evidently intended as a metaphor for a certain organ. Looking through the gap, she sees an attractive figure from behind, which makes her blush and his heart beat faster. With an accidental slip, their eyes meet, and in that moment, time seems to stand still. Perhaps this is love at first sight.
Hej, tantrine! Vill du ha lite prinskorv eller?
The prince's servant's lewd behavior was shocking, and the prince's words were even more unbelievable.
Det är det enda jag inte knullar.
Although Elvira flees in fear, she continues to observe secretly from nearby. For a long time, the influence of romantic poetry has instilled in her an irresistible infatuation with the prince, to the point where the collision between dreams and reality brings forth pure and heartfelt tears.
Elvira.
Elvira did not return home until nightfall, feeling reluctant to leave. Upon arrival, she heard a girl's cries coming from the stable. After entering, Elvira witnessed a shocking scene. Agnes was involved in an intimate act with the stableman. The depiction in these scenes is explicit and direct. Viewers who are interested are encouraged to watch the original film for further details. Agnes's relationship with the stableman violated the strict codes of noble conduct. As a consequence, her mother demoted Agnes to the status of a worker. Elvira was pleased to see a strong competitor removed from her path. She ate the cake heartily and without restraint. Of course, the real reason for her unrestrained behavior was the tapeworm in her stomach. Following the dismissal of the stableman, Alma volunteered to take care of the horses, which served as foreshadowing for the story's conclusion. Agnes quickly adjusted to her new role as a worker and appeared to find enjoyment in tasks such as feeding and milking the cows. 3 months later, Elvira's mother removed her nose brace, revealing a straight and refined nose that could be described as flawless. Combined with her now freely flowing wavy hair, Elvira's appearance had undergone a dramatic transformation. Elvira had evolved from an ugly duckling into a white swan, yet she was still not content and sought additional treatment from a doctor. During the eyelash grafting procedure, the doctor applied a minimal amount of anesthetic before using a sharp surgical instrument to pierce Elvira's eyelid. This segment utilized extensive close-up and macro shots, with Elvira's anguished cries providing a stark auditory background. The effect was sufficiently unsettling to induce strong discomfort in viewers, fundamentally altering the tone of the film. At midnight, accompanied by lightning and thunder, Elvira struggled to sleep due to a combination of severe eye pain and intense hunger. At the same time, Alma underwent a significant personal milestone, though her demeanor reflected concern rather than joy. Although both had reasons for celebration, Elvira, whose eyes were covered, did not notice the blood on her sister's clothes. Instead, she made her way to the kitchen by touch. At that moment, Agnes heard the commotion and approached, carrying an oil lamp. Rather than expressing disdain toward Elvira, Agnes kindly offered her several pieces of cake. I suspect that seeing the others' injuries evoked a sense of compassion. The training program was nearing its conclusion. Since several classmates were unable to meet the dance instructor's standards, Elvira, now with an improved nose, was given an opportunity. Her outstanding performance earned the instructor's approval, making her the lead dancer and bringing her dream within reach. However, on the eve of the ball, an alarming issue emerged. Elvira began to experience hair loss. This was evidently a side effect of the tapeworm eggs. At that moment, the tailor delivered an exquisitely crafted green ball gown, which completely transformed Elvira's demeanor. The tailor noticed Elvira's hair loss, and while her mother appeared deeply concerned, it was not due to her daughter's health. Upon seeing the tailor produce a golden wig, her mother immediately became delighted. Of course, such transformations also have consequences, as evidenced by the sounds made from Elvira sneaking around for food. After finishing her late-night snack and returning to her room, Elvira was surprised to find Agnes holding her ball gown in her arms.
Jag ska gå på balen. Ni kan inte stoppa mig. Släpp den! Släpp den!
While pulling continuously, Elvira tore the other person's dance dress. She reported this to her mother, but her mother showed no concern, reasoning that Agnes did not even own a proper dress. Meanwhile, Agnes was so overcome with grief that she fell asleep, lying on her father's corpse. The scene shifts to a close-up of her father's face, now crawling with maggots, presenting a deeply disturbing image. Suddenly, a bright light illuminated the area around Agnes. Her biological mother appeared angelically before her. When Agnes looked down, she saw that the repulsive maggots had transformed into charming silkworms, spinning pure white silk on her torn dance skirt, and hidden within the fabric was a pair of elegant dance shoes. Our memories of Cinderella are finally restored, and with them comes the climax of the film. As night descended, the grand palace was brilliantly illuminated. Elvira arrived at the palace with her mother, her eyes full of excitement, but the rumbling in her stomach made her anxious. She wondered if she would be able to endure until the end of the ball. First is the appearance of the aristocratic dancers. The expressions of the aristocratic men clearly show considerable restraint. The prince stood next to the king, appearing uninterested in the women presented to him. Finally, it was Elvira's turn to make her entrance. Her stunning attire caused quite a stir and drew covetous gazes from the men. Elvira greeted the prince with a formal bow, which seemed to stir his previously indifferent heart, while his attendants remained restless. The opening act, a pedal dance, began. The costumes were truly stunning. Standing in the center position, Elvira waved to the prince, whose gaze was completely drawn in, his eyes now focused only on the principal dancer and her supporting performers. This symbolism is meaningful, as flower stamens represent the reproductive organs of plants. Elvira's gesture of blowing a kiss fully captivated the prince. When it was time to choose a dance partner at the ball, the prince selected her without hesitation, making Elvira's prospects for the future seem secure. After several elegant and intimate turns on the dance floor, the two drew emotionally closer, with the prince even expressing his affection. However, at that moment, everyone's attention shifted to the entrance, where a girl wearing a glowing fluorescent dress arrived late. Despite wearing a mask, her graceful posture was unmistakable, immediately drawing the prince's interest. He first walked toward Elvira, but as she witnessed her place being overtaken, she experienced indescribable sorrow, while a persistent churning sensation arose in her abdomen. She clutched her stomach and ran outside, only stopping when she reached a deserted spot, where she could no longer endure the pain and finally vomited. Resting on the thick black liquid were numerous crystal-clear tapeworm eggs. A faint larva appeared inside. At that moment, her mother hurried over and asked what had happened.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
However, the mother remained indifferent to her child's health, urging her to be strong, even resorting to a strong slap. Even if the prince was unattainable, she believed any palace noble would suffice. The daughter was merely a tool for her to generate income and pay off debts. When the clock struck midnight, she finally recognized her competitor, who turned out to be Agnes. As the Cinderella scene unfolded, Agnes quickly departed. The prince pursued her, but all he recovered was a single shoe.
Flickan som kan få på sig den här skon. Henne kommer jag gifta mig med.
Back at the carriage, Elvira screamed in pain, her judgment clouded by hatred. Armed with a kitchen knife, she confronted Agnes, demanding the shoe be handed over. The situation escalated into a physical struggle between the two.
Ge mig skon! Ge mig den! Nej!
At the moment Elvira was about to strike with the knife, her mother returned home, accompanied by a man. Elvira raised the shoe to lodge her complaint. Yet the mother showed no concern, as she had already set her sights on a new goal, leaving Elvira overwhelmed by the collapse of her dreams. Looking at her own oversized feet, Elvira, in a moment of irrational desperation, came up with a bold idea. She picked up the nearby kitchen knife, measured it against the shoe, and drew a bloody line across her 5 toes. Next, she took a wooden stick and pressed the kitchen knife onto the marked area. After taking several deep breaths, she finally resolved to proceed. Her toe was severed instantly. Alma immediately came over when she heard the commotion. Without hesitation, she promptly assisted in stopping my sister's bleeding. The mother and her boyfriend arrived shortly after, and the camera zoomed in on the severed toe. The sight of the mutilated flesh was so horrifying that the new boyfriend fainted immediately. The mother, however, immediately comprehended her daughter's motive. Instead of tending to Elvira's injury, she merely administered painkillers.
Dock ut ett fot jag inte har med. Rinsen av vänstra skon.
As Alma watched in shock, the mother reached her decision.
Hon kommer till att passa skon.
The mother seized the kitchen knife and quickly amputated Elvira's right toe. She then proceeded to amputate the toes on the uninjured left foot as well. In her coma, Elvira imagined the prince personally coming to put the white shoe on her foot, holding her in his arms, full of happiness. When she awoke, she was met with the cold reality, intense pain, and a wave of nausea. Nevertheless, when she heard the prince was coming, she struggled to stand. She collapsed heavily to the floor, then crawled helplessly, eventually sliding down the stairs and losing all mobility, presenting a stark contrast to the poised and graceful Agnes.
Den passade! Jag har funnit min prinsessa! Vackra jungfru, Jag har längtat.
The prince's declaration shattered Elvira's last remaining hopes. All of the suffering and pain she had endured now appeared meaningless. The prince gradually disappeared from view. In his place stood Elvira's sister Alma, the only one who truly loved she. Alma administered the tapeworm antidote to her sister. Following a tumultuous mix of voluntary and involuntary convulsions, a tapeworm poked its head out from Elvira's mouth. Next came a merciless tug to remove the parasite. The overwhelming nausea caused Elvira to roll her eyes back. However, Alma did not stop her efforts. With a firm pull, a large segment of tapeworm was expelled from Elvira's mouth. The scene was both shocking and disturbing. Fortunately, Elvira's condition stabilized and she was no longer in danger. Alma declined her mother's gesture. Seeing her mother still humbly attending to her male companion, Alma completely abandoned any desire to say goodbye. She supported his sister as they walked down the steps. Then, with considerable effort, Alma mounted a horse with her sister, carrying both of their futures as they set off into the distance. This concludes the story. The Ugly Season is a truly unique film. It reinterprets classic fairy tales, adapting them into the horror genre. The film presents modern narratives within a classical framework. Its most notable characteristic is its storytelling from a female perspective. This aspect is strikingly similar to the effect of certain substances. It is also directed by a female filmmaker. The film also explores themes of female anxiety regarding physical appearance. Additionally, it criticizes the immoral behavior of upper-class men. Although the film contains certain feminist elements, it is undoubtedly transformative for the development of the horror genre. The structure of the story is highly innovative and imaginative. Its emotional expressions and cinematography are both vivid and nuanced. The film offers viewers a unique and refreshing experience. Moreover, it is thought-provoking, possessing philosophical depth that surpasses conventional horror films. There is one additional point worth noting. In fact, the original versions of many fairy tales we encountered in childhood were actually intended for adults. Many of these stories include certain dark themes. For example, in the original version of Sleeping Beauty, the prince violated her rather than merely kissing her. Similarly, in Cinderella, beyond the stepsisters mutilating their feet to fit the shoe, they were eventually blinded by ravens and became beggars. Upon reflection, these tales are quite gruesome. Therefore, stories composed solely of beautiful imagery can often be deceptive. That concludes today's discussion. Thank you for watching and see you next time.